Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Mind Clash Podcast, episode 59, the state of the Rome. Not the state of the art, the state of the Rome. And we are joined by a bunch of great guests to discuss in our main topic, roaming. Is it still viable? Still good? Are we still roaming nowadays? Are we just getting supers dropped on us everywhere we go? Well, let's meet our guests first. We'll start at the top. And Terry?
I'm Entry Kendraven with Digital Vendetta. I'm one of the founding members, I suppose, and I like to shoot things.
An Eve Vegas survivor.
I'm an Eve Vegas survivor, and my voice sounds much nicer than it did all weekend.
Yeah, that damaged a lot of voices. Mine, I yelled a little bit at the pub this weekend with my family, and it quickly came back to damaged.
It doesn't take a whole lot.
Nope. New guest to the show as well, Red John.
Hello, hello. I am Red John. I am the CEO and main FC of the Glory Holers, a C5 wormhole PvP alliance.
And were you at Vegas?
And yeah, I was actually at Vegas. I didn't participate in the festivities as much as others. I ended up staying in the B&B and being very relaxed. We'll leave it at that.
Oh, you were hanging
It was a
out
good
with
time.
fancy stuffs, weren't you?
Maybe.
He was in the relaxing medicinals as well.
No, most of my alliance ended up there. It was a good time.
Beautiful. Returning guest, Tao.
Hey, Tao Kale, one of the founding members of Thermodynamics, like a Thera-based small gang PvP alliance. And I was not at Eve Vegas, but I was kind of longingly watching people's Snapchat stories and being very annoyed.
We had fun for you.
Yeah.
I mean, if we could package up the fun and like take it to other places, like maybe have fan fest around the world, maybe we could do that. Just crazy ideas. You Millennium.
I'm Newmill. I'm a member of the Dickwad squad in Vote Capel. However, I mostly fly small gang with the high-sec based roaming corp, Fight the Blob.
Haven't heard about that group. You're gonna have to tell us more about it.
It's pretty much just a private NPSI group.
You know, you get the most targets when you shoot everyone.
Yeah.
All right, beautiful. Well, thank you for joining me this week. This is kind of the last week before, well, not even the last week anymore. We got one day before the shit hits the fan.
Isn't it a matter of hours?
I suppose. I mean, when people are hearing this on recording, it'll be already over.
Yeah, I mean, I just know my industry person's telling me it's big, and all I'm thinking is pew.
Well,
And I'm just wishing services were a bit cheaper.
Oh my guess, the prices are crazy right now.
I, for one, welcome the lack of fucking Serbs everywhere.
if you haven't figured it out yet, Lifeblood comes out tomorrow. This is the large change that is going to affect mostly moon mining through the introduction of the refinery upwell structure. In a medium and large size, it will allow you to anchor a refinery at a moon and extract some ore into a nice belt, and then get your miners to head out there and pick up those rocks, and then take advantage of the new mining ledger, which tracks how many rocks you've killed, and share that wealth through your alliance in obviously the form of refinery taxes, bringing you to the Tech 2 market, where you can now produce reactions within the industry window through the new refineries, and you can do your alchemy and your reactions and make that moon goo into all of the things you make moon goo into. Addition to that, we also have the Grease's Shipyards coming tomorrow. This is introducing the 3 new capital ships available through their line: the Cayman, the Komodo, and the Loggerhead, available to those people who complete that raid style content. We also have, for the high-sec players, we have some introductions of new content through the Resource Wars, which is a mining / PvE based, like a small version of high-sec well, it's not really a high-sec incursion. It's like a mission style, levels 1 through 5, where you can go and participate with a small group and complete the objectives for LP rewards for each of the 4 factions. And then the high-sec new style of high-sec incursion is the Pirate Forward Operating Bases, which are a small group kind of content between 10 and 25 people. Where you complete a forward operating base, which is a structure similar to the shipyards. Wow, stumbled over that word. It's similar to the Gristas and Blood Raiders shipyard structure, where it'll have the advanced AI tied in with the NPCs, where you will be able to complete that task, and they will use their advanced AI to either break the game or ruin your day. And if you can't find all this new content, don't worry. They've introduced a new agency content browser, which will allow you to track down all of these missions and suggest missions and content and locations, epic arc agents that you can do around the galaxy. So if you're starved for content or you're a new player and don't exactly know what to do next, this will give you some ideas of what's available to you and where you could travel to find more content, even if it's an asteroid belt or an anomaly. And if you're a new player and you're flying a small ship, or you're an old vet and you want to, trash all your Vexers, there's an Alpha Ship Balance Pass coming tomorrow with a couple changes to cruisers, frigates, and destroyers, making some stronger, some weaker. You can check all those changes out on EVE Updates, or check one of our previous shows. Y'all excited for these changes?
I actually am. I had a very pleasing EVE Vegas when I heard a lot of the changes coming out.
I'm always happy to see CCP taking kind of an active stance towards the new player experience and improving things to keep people in the game. But I think this might be a little misguided, because at the end of the day, the majority of people, at least that I know, kind of stay in the game for that out of high sec, kind of more end game content, if they're into kind of shooting stuff in space at all, as opposed to sitting in stations, and focusing more on those kind of pressing, making null and low sec more interesting for players, I think might be a better use of their time.
I'm personally a massive fan of the agency content browser. When I was a new player, I just stayed in high sec for quite a long time and had a lot of trouble finding content to do. I think that would definitely make it easier for new players to find something to do early on.
I'm just kind of hoping that it's going to help retain more people for us to shoot.
Indeed.
Well, CCP did mention, just a little off-the-cuff stat, that there are more people running level 3 missions in high sec using assault frigates than there are players running super capitals.
That is interesting.
One would hope so, right?
Right?
I do hope there are more people with access to assault frigates than the biggest ships in the game.
But actively
Though it doesn't really
running
mean
them,
that much anymore.
like, that's their content. They log in to just run level 3s.
Well, I think that was the interesting part, was that it was people that have been around long enough that they can actually fly bigger ships, but they just choose to fly the level 3s and the assault frigates. Something about the amount of time it takes to finish them versus the ISK reward.
That's very interesting, because I run missions sometimes and level 3 is just hardly that much worth it at all.
Yeah, I think, people can spend their time any way that they like, but I feel like if you're playing the game to be shooting, red X's and high sec, there's probably better games for that. But the great part about EVE is it's such a kind of a weird, mysterious universe that kind of doing anything within it, especially with other people, can be fun, just because it's so RPable and wacky and mysterious, and that can kind of color in a lot of the more boring aspects of mission running.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm not going to defend the mission running system at all. I'm really hoping people enjoy these resource wars. There's a lot of interesting, cool tools, especially from what I saw in the presentations at EVE Vegas, that allows CCP to iterate on this mission style content with objectives that seem normal from other games, like complete an objective in a certain amount of time, complete micro objectives within the greater objective, turn in things to a certain NPC, fly to a beacon, achieve that beacon point, and instead of just rats spawning in at the predetermined spot like they have for years in EVE, things actually warp in and change their angle and react to the amount of power that you bring. And then there's also stuff with the NPCs fighting each other.
Well,
I just hope the. You go on.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of the new changes are also trying to push some of the high suckers to be more social about things with the agency and being able to find things. And from what I understand, like the resource wars, like you can only have so many people inside the plex or whatever they're going to call it. So it encourages socialization and teaming up with people to obtain an objective.
I just hope it makes missions more intuitive in their design on what you have to do, because currently you have to actually look up a lot of them online to actually complete them. It's always shoot some really obscure structure or something.
Yeah, one of the problems that I feel like PvE and EVE has always had is it's so like kind of either so basic that like it's incredibly boring and you just kind of sit there, kill stuff, and then stuff spawns and then you kill that. Or it's like archaic and doesn't really make any sense and you basically, like Millennium said, have to like look it up to see what to do. Which is the case for a lot of things like wormhole PvP or PvE and mission running and stuff like that. And that's, I think, a big part of the huge learning curve that everyone kind of always refers to when they talk about EVE. And it'd be great if CCP had the time and the resources to iterate on the current PvE systems they have in greater detail. But I guess we're just going to be kind of moving at this pace for now, where it's very slow, and hopefully it ends up kind of capturing more people in the end.
Well, but this is all the new stuff, right? These are using the new AIs from the mining rats, and all these NPCs are supposed to have the modules. You can newt them. They adhere to like player fitting standards. It's a new AI. So like the one team was making the AI, and then the other team was making the tools. And this is the first thing that they've come out with combining both of them. So I think it's like the first steps into the new PvE.
Which is great because, like I kind of mentioned, there's so much in EVE that you just don't really know about until you know it. And a lot of stuff you just kind of have to look up and doesn't really make any sense until, you're years down the line. You're like, well, that's probably because of, weird buggy code or because people didn't really know what they were doing when they designed the game. So a lot of like PvE right now just doesn't really make any sense, especially if you're coming from other games. And I guess the question I have for all of you guys is like, what do you feel about PvE and EVE, and do you think it should be a focus at all of CCP, or do you think it should just kind of stay on the back burner while other things that people complain about on Reddit all the time take the forefront?
PvE is definitely very important for the game, because without it, new players just won't get into the game. Like, it's the first thing you'll do, like, naturally, because it's what the tutorial pushes you into.
Do you think that's a good thing though? Because you could have a system more like Fact War where people started in a war zone and had to fight and made money by killing other players, and that's just kind of the way we have it set up right now, where people are brought into the game through that PvE lens as opposed to in other games that might have more of a focus on PvP.
Well, I think it serves a purpose, right? Because you still have to learn how some of the stuff works with all the
Certainly.
and the learning cliff we have. So the tutorial to take you through some PvE stuff where you don't just die in 3 seconds and wonder what happened, I think makes sense to at least get people a feel of how to activate modules and control their ship a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that PvE, since it's the way that you make money, and everyone needs money in order to do whatever activity they start doing, whether it's market PvP, actual PvP, whether it's being a member of Signal Cartel, you still need to afford your first couple ships. So making your money off PvE needs to be interesting, and it needs to be engaging, I know it's an impossible curve to be able to push out content endlessly and keep players engaged. Then you're chasing like a treadmill that never ends, because you'll put 6 months of work into a piece of content. The players will achieve that piece of content in a week, and then they'll ask for more stuff, and you don't have another 6 months of dev time to produce something else for the next week, right? That's what I think is they're doing well within the tools that they're building. And CCB Berger was iterating on this in his presentation at Vegas, and then a little bit otherwise when I was talking to him, that the tools provide them with so many little options where they can fit them together into pieces of content that through the agency, which is obviously a test bed for them putting out new pieces of content, they can try things out, see what works, see what doesn't, and then iterate upon the stuff that becomes popular. And the best part about it is that since the AI is getting to the point where they start to behave like players, and their ships are actually player ships with player fittings, you can react to the type of E-War that they have, the type of prop mod that they have. You know that different ships have different roles, that you can actually learn through the PvE that is actually set up to play like the game, instead of learning how to beat red crosses that have different behavior and having to learn new behavior to beat actual players.
Well, also, these things use the new AI that actually learns what you're doing, and well, I don't know if some of the high sec stuff does, but like I know like the Satoyos and nullsec and stuff, like they actually counter what you're bringing.
I think I heard some talk at Vegas that they experimented with machine learning of the AI fighting AI, and they didn't like where that went, so they just turned that off.
Oh, did
Yeah,
they?
I feel like that'd probably be too hard to integrate into their into the game as it is right now.
I felt these Sotoyos just to put more and more numbers just straight onto you.
I thought
Like, it was
remember-
pretty silly at first. Like, there was just so much stuff on grid that was just like crashing games.
I haven't heard anything about that. I like the new direction they're going with PvE. I know someone mentioned like PvE is harder in wormholes. To be honest, it's kind of stale. If I'm being realistic, it's not as hard as it looks. It's harder if you're coming from K space into W space just because of how different the sites are. But they just get really formulaic and they're super easy to run once you know how. And the difficulty of running them doesn't really scale with the reward, and we would like more difficult, more rewarding sites. We would also like sites that scram, but be interesting to see where they go.
Yeah, there certainly is a disbalance between risk reward and wormholes right now. I think that's a huge issue, and it's forced a lot of people out.
A lot of people, especially moving to high class. Now, high class is sort of on the up and up right now. We just got a lot of PvP groups and people moving for the content, and you can kind of make enough that it's still worth it. But we definitely 100% lost a lot of the whales that we used to hunt. Like it's a joke how long it takes to kill a upgraded Avenger, and it's worth 15 million. It's just not worth. It's not worth escalating it. The way we run them is with minimal escalation. It's good money, but it's not worth for most people. It's not worth the risk to put dreads on grid when you can run it with snakes and then Huss farm it. So we don't get dreads on grid as much as we used to.
It's also a massive pain in the arse to set up dreads, set up a Fortizar, and get that all running compared to just buying 2 snakes plus getting a DST.
Exactly. One of the things we requested was that sites scram and tie the drifter make the drifter only spawn if a dread triggers it. Force caps on grid. I don't know if that's going to be a thing. I'm just more interested in the better AI for PvE in general, because I feel like they might test bed some of the harder stuff in wormholes, and I'll find that interesting at least, because at the end of the day, most of my guys don't want to rat because it's boring.
I think that's one of the nice things about them implementing it now in HiSec with the numbers that they're showing, with how many people are running sites in HiSec. It's going to give them the best feedback and data on just how everything reacts to players, because let's face it, the players, we just try to break everything.
100%.
So on this topic of kind of taking PvE and applying it to parts of PvP in the game. How important do you think that is for EVE? Because if you look at other MMOs like Guild Wars or WoW or whatever, the player base is usually kind of divided between PvEers and PvPers, and there's obviously a lot of crossover, but they are kind of distinctive play styles, and people don't have to interact with both. Whereas, at least from my perspective, people who play EVE solely for PvE are probably not necessarily in the majority player base wise, but sorry, in the minority player base wise, but probably in the minority on at least things that kind of are newsworthy within the game, and don't really have a demonstrable effect on all this kind of crazy stuff that seems to bring people into the game in the first place, like the giant fights and all the the permaloss and whatnot. So how important do you think looking at PvE as a different gameplay choice or a different way to play the game versus kind of an introduction to PvP is?
I think it's definitely a bit of both. You kind of do need to do PvE if you're going to do some PvP, especially early on when you're getting into it. But they're definitely the people who just are stuck in PvE. They only do PvE and they just enjoy that. It should definitely be a valid playstyle either way.
For I make jokes about eyes glazing over when PvE comes up, just because I don't like PvE. It's boring as hell, and I'd rather shoot people than red X's. But that being said, and this comes from a W space perspective, and I think this holds true for most of EVE, whether most of EVE recognizes it or not. But this is a predator-prey environment, and if you have entertaining PvE that is challenging and rewarding and scales with the level of space you're in, it's going to attract a lot of people, especially if they get more risk and can't just do it mindlessly in nullsec. If it entertains them, they're not going to do it mindlessly, and I think that's a big deal. More people out doing things in space is more people out in space to kill.
All right. I think that's perfect segue into our main topic, but I want to cover a little bit of the player news before we jump in. I like where this is going, though.
Giggity.
So, we had some things go down this week. Thank you to Orion, who's helping out on our production side. He took a bunch of the big comments from Reddit this week. We had a Dangerous Voltage Keepstar online in ZXIC TAC 7 and catch with no opposition.
I did not even know this happened. So I can kind of see where the no opposition came from.
Are Keepstars just old fish? Like nobody cares anymore?
I disagree with that statement. I mean, I'm technically the former owner of MTO2, so I might be biased.
I think the Keepstar kill mail is more about kind of the fight that it generated than actually killing it, because it's like, well, we killed 100 mobile depots that added up to whatever amount of ISK, but that's not really as interesting as, well, we had this huge fight over this big structure that takes a while to kill and whatnot. So I think that's what it's really important about.
Did it get leaked to Reddit in advance? Was there a sufficient ping of the community?
Be right back.
I actually had to pull up Dotland just to see where it was.
Like, I've been roaming through Catch a bunch, and there's a lot of players hanging around there. I mean, is the blue donut just too thick there?
I don't think it's a donut. It's a regional thing, right? So I mean, just looking at Dotland, it's Waka, it's Brave. I mean, it's Legacy. It's like in the middle of it.
But PL's in the area. There's Goons. There's a Goonsig in the area. I mean, it's not too far away from Delve. Providence. I don't know. Just surprising. Another Keepstar online.
Yeah, I mean, with there being multiple Keepstars like in individual regions, I think people are kind of like, well, there's another one. There's another 10 trillion hour grind that someone's gonna have to do someday, but it doesn't really get the blood flowing anymore.
I mean, I guess it depends. Do they own the system? Is it friendly, or is it like a forward operating base?
It's definitely a friendly system for them. It's like right in the middle of SF.
Yeah, I mean, if it's in friendly space, then it's I understand with the amount of people in the area, but it's it's quite the task to form up and take one of those down, whether it's anchoring or whether it's already anchored.
I'd also just imagine that since it's side of their coalition space, they've already got other keep stars nearby. So it wouldn't be as much of a huge hindrance as it would be compared to someone anchoring a keep star in some way important.
I'm surprised there's no plugin to Dotlan or a Dotlan equivalent showing citadels per space.
I mean, like I just did the jump range for just regular caps, and yeah, it's like most of the region is in range.
Yeah, that region is really small, light year wise. But I live in Fountain, so I mean. Alright, another big thread on the Eve subreddit this week was PL. Created a whole bunch of adversity by kicking adversity from their group. A bunch of leaks from Doom Chinchilla.
That turned into one of those popcorn eating Reddit threads.
Was this
That was-
adversity the group complaining about not being able to shoot people?
I heard that was actually recorded like months ago or something, and they just leaked it now. I don't know how much of truth there is to that.
I don't know.
Well, adversity
Against my religion, the Blazing Blues.
Adversity is the original founder of Tissue, correctly?
Yeah.
And I heard that they reopened this week.
So they they ended up being kicked out of PL?
I don't know if it was a kick or a leave.
Culmination maybe. But aren't they going around and shooting the people that were neutral to them now anyway?
I mean, the main complaint in that leaked SoundCloud was that they couldn't shoot people who were neutral when those people were shooting them. So it wouldn't surprise me.
I mean, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, like if, like, I don't know, if they're neutral, you shoot them. If they're blue, don't.
Yeah, and don't have blues.
It's definitely nice to see another alliance come into play again, especially one that's not covered in blues.
Yeah, one thing I think Eve is kind of sorely lacking right now is smaller groups that are trying to punch above their weight, or don't care too much about winning every fight or all that kind of stuff, and just kind of making a name for themselves, which is probably just not like realistic for most people who play the game right now, just because it's like there's not enough to gain by doing that. But it's nice to see kind of groups branching off again and not all clumping up in the same super cat blob, even though that is kind of the meta, so to speak.
Well, I mean, the whole punching above your weight thing, like it's a tall order, right? Like especially if you're on a roam, because you're usually outside of your own capital umbrella, so it's you're getting hot dropped by people, and there's only so much you can do based on the amount of people you have. If you're rolling through with 100 dudes, it's a little different than if you're just a small fleet of 30 people.
Yeah, or even
Anyone-
smaller.
Anyone remember that alliance that popped up? I want to say about a year ago. Who said they were going to do just that, and then took on Drone Region.
What was that?
There was a alliance about a year ago said they're going to do just that. They wanted to punch above their weight. They wanted to upset things. They wanted to make a name for themselves. So they got a bunch of people to join them. Won like 2 fights in I want to say it was the Drone Lands. It was a few
Was that
brave men.
drone walkers?
No, not Drone Walker. That's kind of my point. Like no one remembers.
The high sec dudes that invaded Cobalt Edge or tried to.
I think they were called a few brave men. I want to say they won, like had some big wins, and then they just fizzled. A lot of work.
Weren't they're like the angry Germans from high sec, right?
I don't know. I don't remember. I'm trying to find the Zika. Like
because I live in drones, so I'm trying to remember.
They invaded Geminate, I want to say.
Oh, so
They were flying Harbinger fleets.
No, I haven't heard of them.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the success of those kinds of groups is going to come down to how good and competent their leadership is, and people get burnt out so quickly doing that kind of stuff that it's not surprising.
I feel going straight for Gremlin was a bit of a misplay on them. It would have been better to attack somewhere branched off rather than the heart of the enemy.
Yeah, like they had a couple wins and ran face first into a super fleet.
Typical.
What can I expect though in the enemy's most fortified region?
Yeah, the problem is like punching up. It requires you need dedication. You need a really good team, and you need the vision of several years. And I don't know that that's necessarily any fault of the game itself, so much as the fault of human nature, and we tend to like to clump up and be safe.
Yeah, I like that you brought that up because I've had this conversation with a lot of people over the past year or two, as kind of like my corp and the people that I've played with over the past 5, 6 years have stopped playing the game, and it seems like even though people have been complaining about it forever, this blue donut is just getting worse and worse, and there's less and less people to fight. How do you think it's possible to maybe go back to the days of old where there used to be tons of groups fighting each other and living next to each other and fighting all the time, um, and people roaming constantly, or do you think we're kind of faded forever to this safety in numbers, blob, super cap projection that we have nowadays?
I don't
I
know
think
if
it's. You go on.
you go ahead.
Okay, I just think it's much more convenient now to just like make money all day with the de-escalations, the infinite respawning sites, and supers being so easily available to that, and carriers being so strong in sites too. It's just more convenient to that than it is to actually go and make content now.
Well, to what end? Like, because people obviously enjoy watching their wallet go up, and that might end up being kind of what's fulfilling to them playing the game. But do you guys think it's possible that CCP could incentivize smaller groups, being relevant again, or do you think we're kind of on the tail end of the lifetime of that?
So I've brought this up a couple of times. I know not everyone agrees with me, but like you should have to work to have safety. It should be you should have to make some sort of effort to make sure that when you undock, you don't get blown up. And obviously, bigger groups have numbers, and that was my whole like spiel on remove local. I know it's like a meme at this point, but seriously, remove local. Like you need to put effort into securing your space, and it shouldn't be just having Intel bot networks and oh look, local goes up, time to dock up. Like they're
Yeah,
Removing local will
similar to
just punish the smaller players though. The ones who
You're-
cannot set up like accounts at every gate.
I'm just you're telling that to a wormholer.
Well, wormholes are very different in how they work because you can't have an intel channel really for a wormhole because you're always changing
can.
connected to. Yeah, but it's only for like one system or a chain, and that only lasts a day. The problem with removing local and null, I think, is just people are gonna have to completely change their playstyle, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is pretty disruptive without really giving people the means to feel like they have that space that they own. I think that's one of the things that local is really useful for as compared to wormholes where like you kind of have a sense of what's going on in your region. But I think definitely removing local or changing it in some way for nullsec is really important to making it kind of dangerous again because like you said, Intel bots and all these kind of institutions of null now make it pretty much impossible if you're like competent and not just in the shower PVing. Makes it pretty much impossible for people to get caught, especially in subcaps.
I completely disagree. Um, I mean, my alliance is a year and a half old. Just for us to be able to take Sov, we started with 12 dudes like a year and a half ago. We're up to 1,000 members now, but it's a small fish, big pond. Like if we were to take Sov without any kind of friends or somebody to help, we would just be immediately farmed by a larger group. But people get caught all the time in subcaps because people don't pay attention when they're ratting.
Well, that's the
Right.
point. You shouldn't incentivize
But I
people
don't think
being
it
able
has
to not pay
anything to
attention to the
do.
game.
Like it's nothing to do with Intel bots. Like we don't have Intel bots. Like it's literally people not paying attention. Like someone comes,
Well-
sudden jumps through your space, and it doesn't get reported on Intel, or
You-
it does, and someone's not.
You say that, but that's true for your group, but that's by no means true for the majority of groups, especially if you go out in drone land. Like the intel bots exist. I talked to people who were in those corps, and they told me in great detail about their intel bots. They automatically report gangs, and you get a ping.
I
Like,
live in the drone lands.
Well,
okay, well,
And I don't have. If they've got intel bots, I'm not in the channel because our
yeah,
intel
you
is
must
not
not be.
shared.
Like, there's people in drone walkers,
well,
and when they left, they were
intel
telling me about it.
bots
Like, it
aren't-
happened.
Yeah, but you're talking
Intel
about
bots
drone
aren't
walkers.
even not to kind of talk over you guys, but intel bots
Sorry.
aren't really the biggest issue. The problem in my mind is the ability for any random person who's just sitting there ratting to feel relatively safe, not really paying attention to their computer at all, and not having to worry about like getting caught. As long as you're paying attention to local at any given time, you have however long it takes for you, if you're not aligned, to align and then warp, or in the very least, like if you're already aligned, just the moment someone comes in local, you can warp away, and that makes it quite literally impossible for anyone to catch you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, obviously, people shouldn't just automatically get caught if someone's in their space, but it
Exactly.
feels like nowadays when you go roaming, you have to kind of convince people to fight you. Like, there's very little, you go to someone's space and they want to fight you because either, they aren't interested in fighting small groups, or they're jaded to fighting nano gangs, or whatever the reason is. Um, they're busy making money so that they can afford fleet ships. But it feels like you really have to convince people to fight you, and a lot of the way that people do that is by catching ratters. And if you spend, 3 hours, which trust me, this happens all the time. Maybe not 3 hours, but at least two, kind of roaming through nullsec. You're going to run into a lot of systems with like 30 dudes, maybe like 2 or 3 or 4 dudes out in Ishtars or VNIs, and they're all going to be gone, when you're 3 gems away, because someone's going to report you on intel, they'll get aligned, and then the moment you come in local, they're going to warp away, and that's just like kind of all that roaming content is right now, unless people fuck up. And I feel like there has to be maybe some inherent risk with rats pointing more often, or something like that, where people can't just react to a +1 in local and then instantly be safe in nullsec. I feel like that should be something that's kind of relegated to high sec or low sec.
So someone who directly benefits with absurd amounts of money, if I'm not lazy, from wormholes, Astrohouse farming. Currently, one of the biggest complaints in W space as far as PvE goes is MJD rattlesnakes. If you are watching D-Scan or watching your Sig for Sig Pops, you will never, ever, ever lose Microjump Rattlesnake in W space. It's absolutely cancer, and with that, you can make 600 to 1.2 billion an hour in relative safety just by clearing the sites, escalating the drifter, and then using your Astros to farm it. It's completely and totally broken. And even if you make the drifter require like a cap to escalate, you're still making like 600 million an hour without the ability to die. Now people say like they get caught all the time, but the majority of don't. I can't count the amount of people we've jumped in on who just immediately MJD, go dock up and log, or meme us in local, or shit talk us in local. Like sites scramming or pointing or doing something where you have to pay attention to the trigger, I think is really important.
I think locals are definitely a step in the right direction, but they are a bit just too strong for the defender side. Like the 5 to 10 minute inbound where they just get enough time to just rage fig supers is a bit crazy, but making them have to stay in sight for at least a little bit after you come into local is a good thing.
Yeah, I think like a good starting point would at least be a delay on the +1 until either you've decloaked, like you've lost your gate cloak, or maybe it's like a flat 30 seconds or something after you jump into system, which may be too broken, because if you're going on a scepter, you could potentially go between like 3 or 4 systems if they're close together gate-wise without anyone knowing, and then you have warp speeds where you can go from a gate to a site, within seconds. So that might be a little bit too powerful, but right now it just feels like there's no real risk to sitting out there in your VNI or whatever, waiting for people to come into local, and I don't really agree with that. I don't think that should be the case. Being
I think I think local chat should depend on a module that requires SOB to have personally, and that it reports you once you break the gate cloak. I feel like there's a middle ground. Maybe it doesn't even require SOB, but it's something that players have to impact on their own systems to have.
Do you think?
Yeah, one thing. Oh, go ahead.
And isn't allowed in W space.
Do you think NPC null should have local in that case?
Yes. I think local should be tied to Sov in some way, and something that myself and a good friend of mine, moderator, were going over was kind of a way to implement this, which we came up with a few ways, but the one that stuck with me the most was kind of tying it to a structure not unlike maybe an ESS or some Sov structure like an iHub, where you have to entosis it, and it's kind of responsible for the local over a few systems or maybe a constellation or even a whole region. And by entosising it, you kind of shut down local or you delay it somehow. That allows people to come into your space and harass you without having to worry about messing with your Sov directly. And I think that would add kind of a big layer of our space is under attack kind of feeling, and it'd force people to either forego a key aspect of Sov, which is that intel that you get from local, or have to actually take an active role in defending their space.
Well, I think the question is, do you really think it's just the people using local to get safe, or do you think it's people being risk adverse and not forming to actually take a fight from people roaming their space? Because there's a serious risk adverse nature to a lot of people.
Well, I think the sorry, not to get to talk too much, but I think the
Yeah,
risk
just go on.
aversion, the risk aversion doesn't even matter as much, because those people, I think it should be incentivized for those people to not be a null. I think the most healthy state for null is PvP oriented, and one where if you're not, a shark, if you're not one of the people out there able to fight and defend yourself, you should be kind of eaten and taken out of null. And that's obviously that's not going to happen, because people have support networks and they have these giant groups that they fly with. But the more kind of dog eat dog the null is, the better, I think. And if you make it harder for those people to exist just being Care Bears in null, I think it'll have a huge impact on the way that people play.
I feel the risk adverseness also comes from the fact that a lot of groups just aren't that good at PvP, and they just don't like getting destroyed all the time. Like, some groups just don't have any FCs who know remotely what they're doing, like smaller groups, NPC null groups specifically. They just feel that they just need to bring more numbers, more DPS, and bigger ships.
Well, I mean, so Tao, you fly with thermodynamics, right?
Yeah.
So you come into somebody's space, you try to gank something, you get on intel, someone gets into the Thera hole, and they see 30 Lokis sitting on the other side of the gate.
That's
They
not
only
what
got
I do.
10 dudes. Okay, you don't. I thought maybe you flew with the Thermo and the Volta.
I do. Thermo doesn't do that. Thermo has always been about sub 5 people, sub 6 people. We do kind of work with Volta sometimes, but we're not really interested in fleet fights above 10 on 10.
Because I think that's a.
But yeah, that is a big problem. Sorry, not to cut you off.
No, I'm sorry, we're talking over each other. But yeah, we see you see Thermo in local, or you see Volta in local, and we know where the Thera hole is, and you check out the Thera hole, and there's 30 Lokis sitting on the other side. You've only got 12 dudes, and you want to form, but there's not a whole, maybe you don't have the dudes to do it at the time. But small gangs, 10 dudes around, and nano gangs, yeah, that's fun as hell. You undock what you can and go at it.
And that's I think the most fun I'll ever have in the game is gameplay like that. And I came kind of from the null bear side of things, and eventually transitioned to being more of a roaming PvPer. I started really null PvPing in Flying Dangerous Alliance. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, Figgle. And we would always have people come into our space, and we'd undock whatever we could in some random shit and just try to fight them, and we'd die, and no one really cared because that was fun. And that kind of who cares, let's just try to fight gameplay style, I think is really gone out the window as people get tired of getting shit on and feel like there's they're not having fun fighting, which I totally get. And I think that's one of the problems with Eve, where and like any other game where there's permaloss, it's going to be really frustrating to lose. But the problem is that most people, I think, don't see things that way. In theory, I think most of the time, at least from my experience, you come into local with a 3, 4, 5-man gang, and people say, "Oh, we don't want to fight nano gangs," or "Oh, we're just not interested in fighting," and they don't undock anything, which is probably 80% of null right now, at least in my experience.
I've talked to some. Go on.
No, I was just basically gonna agree with him. Like, it's not just Nolan. It's not just about people finding hard counters. Like, most groups just don't actually want to fight unless they're 100% guaranteed they're gonna win, and that goes pretty much for all areas of space. Wormholes is sort of the exception, but like,
I've actually comboed some of the like Care Bears I've tried to gank before. And they just take on it as kind of interesting. They're just like, we don't want to fight. PvP is unfair. We don't stand a chance. We just always die. They just don't enjoy it because they just get farmed.
You know, I actually think that's kind of a meme, to be honest. I think most people actually do enjoy fighting and are interested in fighting. And a lot of times, like you go into those null systems late at night, and some random dude's just like, okay, fuck it, I'm gonna undock my zealot with T1 beams and like a undersized prop because he has no idea what he's doing, and he's gonna try to fight you. And then inevitably he dies, and he's like, oh shit, good fight. And that's like, I'm shaking still, GF, and that's really great. But I think the problem right now is people have a really warped sense of risk versus reward where they're like, okay, if I die, well, I just fucked up and I lost and that sucks and I don't want to lose. And there isn't really any benefit to dying other than maybe like learn something. So people don't really want to necessarily take the risk of dying where they're not really gonna have fun with it, which I get it. Some people just won't enjoy that. It's a part of the game, but I think that I can't remember who mentioned it earlier. Someone said a lot of people are just not good at PvP, but what gets in the way of that is not fighting. Like everyone who is good at PvP in this game has lost a shit ton of ships and has done a lot of stupid stuff and continues to do stupid stuff, and they just do it less than other people, and that's why they're
dear
good.
Lord, yes.
Oh, it's like anything else. I mean, you don't become
Yeah.
a pro athlete without some practice, right?
Yeah, I think what really gets in the way of most of those kinds of interactions is a really warped sense of what people have to lose, and everyone kind of wanting to be in their Sunday best all the time, and their T3s and their hacks and whatnot. And there aren't really a lot of people who are ready to just undock a T1 cruiser and see what happens, because it's kind of a foregone conclusion most of the time. If you undock your Vexor to try and fight an Orthrus or your 3 Vexors, you're just going to get kited on and die, because the people who are flying the Orthruses are also probably risk averse and also probably like, well, I just want to win. But I think if people were a little bit more open, like, let's just fucking duke it out. And I hope that the T2 Moongoo changes make this more possible, where less people are going to be in T2 ships, to just kind of duke it out and see who's got the better fit. I think that's a much more healthy atmosphere for the game.
I think there are a couple of solid points, but so like some of my guys, they're newer. Like I'm only 2.5 years old myself, but you get the nano gangs coming through and they get frustrated because maybe they don't have that personal piloting skill to be able to handle a nano gang, or they just get tired of, oh well, they killed our NTs and then they just warped off, we don't get to kill anything, so why bother.
I feel the cases where they just kill entities and warp off is more often when you just bring overwhelming numbers that they cannot fight. The group I personally fly with, we just unlock T1 BCs, fit them to kite, and just go out and have fun. We'll say glitchy any fight as long as we have a chance of winning. But people just bring like 2 carriers, 10 subcaps for like 3 battle cruisers, and then they're just surprised when you run after killing the tackle.
Oh, you got a 10-man nano gang, better drop supers.
What this circles around to is like, so learning how it comes back down to like learning to PvP is hard. Now, whelping something isn't hard, but learning to PvP and like learning from something from it is hard. Learning how to counter a nano gang with equal numbers it's hard to get to that point. I mean, like most of us who have been PvPing a long time, like we all remember the absolutely stupid shit we did. But getting to the point where okay, they're bringing this is what we can do on an equal footing to counter this, and that takes effort. Whereas punching the sign-up button and dropping 3 supers or 14 carriers doesn't. And it isn't that people don't like fighting; they just don't like losing. They put a lot of intrinsic value in that spaceship that doesn't necessarily exist anywhere else other than their mind. Go ahead.
I feel like you guys have been probably playing a little longer than I have, but do you feel that in the current state of where we are in EVE that there's just a lack of FCs with the knowledge to help
Yes.
Yes.
the new bros like overcome the learning cliff or whatever, and just slowly get better and be like, look, it's okay, you whelped a couple ships, but did you learn? And let's go through what happened so you can be better than next time.
There's a big
As-
difference between being someone who can herd cats and get them to all shoot the same target and being an actually skilled FC who understands a changing battlefield.
I don't even think they need a good FC. They just need someone who understands the game and is willing to just tell new players, go out there, have fun. It doesn't matter if you die.
And I don't even know that it's being I don't even know that it's having a good FC. It's just having someone who can cheerlead the fact that it's literally only pixels. Like it doesn't matter. Like
Well-
my group's sort of motto is fly free and die laughing. Like why does it matter? You can make 15 more. Let's go have fun. Let's be content and get content.
I've honestly learned this game under like not so great FCs at the time. They were also learning. We were just having fun together. We were just undocking, going from Ferrer, going to kill some stuff.
I'd
We
like
were
to
just a group of guys learning the game, didn't care about space pixels, just fly some cheap stuff.
I just like to give everyone a reminder we're talking about roaming here in the Mind Clash podcast. I'd like to give a little shout out to a guy who roams our space all the time. His name's Panther 31 Watt, and he's a goon guy. He always roams to our pocket, probably nightly, comes in our time zone. The guy is always flying a Vexor. Now, he'll vary up his fit a little bit, but he's always running about a Vexor with dual armor rep tank, and he'll come fight whatever. Doesn't matter, same fit. He must have 100 of these stashed away in Delve somewhere, and he'll come up and he'll take any fight. If he gets blobbed, he'll say good fight. You should have brought a few less, and he'll be back in an hour. If he gets a good fight, he'll skirmish, he'll fight it out, he'll have a good time, and he might leave. He's not there to gank people. He's just there to encourage people to fight. And he's learned that our group will bring out reasonable numbers to try to kill him, but give him a chance. And sometimes he gets a good fight out of it. Sometimes he gets a couple tackle kills. It doesn't matter about ISK positive to this guy. It just matters about having a good time and having a good fight.
That's an important thing to not lose sight of.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, where it comes down to, if someone's roaming your space, your reaction to what they bring is going to directly affect whether or not they think they should come back. Like if you've got 10 dudes in a nano gang and you drop supers on them, they're gonna be like, fuck these guys. But if you undock some other kind of nano-y things and just kitchen sink stuff and just go at it, then like, oh hey, like that was fun. Like win or lose, like hey, maybe next time we get a wormhole, we'll go back and see these guys.
One thing I do think encourages, and this is coming from a W space perspective, because our space is inherently more assailable. We're smaller. It's easier to kick us out, and the blow of being kicked out is harder. There is no NPC null next door. We're not a sino away from high sec. There's no backup plan really, except for another wormhole we can run to. So like, I wouldn't say everyone follows this, but I think the majority of groups follow this. And the one thing I preach to smaller groups, and when I try to mentor them up in W space, and the one thing I preach to my guys is like, you're undocking and you're agreeing that you're content. And that's just how it goes. And the other thing, and this I think holds true for all of EVE, though I think none of EVE observes it, is that nobody belongs here. You earn your spot here by fighting, by blood. Like if you can't fight for what is yours, you don't deserve to have it, and someone will come take it. And I have defended my stuff from people who wanted to take it, and I have been that person who comes and takes it because I wanted their loot, because they shit talk me, because I didn't like their face, like just whatever reason I wanted. I've been that dude before, and I think in nullsec you don't have that sense of I could lose my stuff. Like I could lose my stuff. Like I have to fight. You don't have to fight, and why fight when you're not gonna win? And why put into the effort when everything you have is unassailable and there's like a guaranteed I win button and there's no one there cheerleading you into a position of like, hey, let's go do this. Let's go do this. Let's go have fun. Like Killboard, Bill Green, it doesn't matter.
I'm pretty sure that I can attest that everything is assailable. I mean, I live out in Peregrine Falls. We owned MTO2 until last week. I currently have a large 90-man super fleet sitting in MTO2, just ready to drop on us at a moment's notice. Like it's just because you live in Saab doesn't mean some
I,
and just start taking.
I don't agree that with that. For perspective, I used to live in Nullsec. Like I came from a Nullsec group that used to control all of Great Wildlands. I remember the nights in Dommy Balls pos bashing, waiting for NC.Supers to log off so that we could bring out dreads and caps. Like I remember what that was like. But we still had an NPC station dock, and like they needed a reason to come after all that because it's a long grind. And I think the problem is the grind aspect. And I'm hoping with this patch, the Citadels kind of fixes some of that. But like, there needs to be a balance between you have enough safety, but not so much that no one ever wants to come kick you out. And my saying about unassailable is like, when a small Roman game comes through, like you don't give a shit. They're not PL, they're not NC dot, they're not going to actually kick you out. And like, you have this sort of buffer layer between annoying enough to maybe drop supers on, but not annoying enough to actually like deploy and kick out because of just the immense grind it is.
I mean, I can understand that from, like trying to give my dudes content and going out on a Friday night drunk in Rome. You have to, as an FC, you have to go to where you know the people are going to undock. So there's only like certain places you can go to.
Exactly.
As you're roaming for 3 hours. Like you go poke horde a bit, or you go up to, for us, we live in Paragon Falls, you go up to Blades of Grass and we go into their back radar pocket, and 3 jumps in, you come back and there's a 50-man Harbinger gang there ready to go. But
yeah, and like
you have to go to the places, and it's frustrating because I got 30 dudes, I got 25 dudes, I just want to fight somebody, like somebody on dock and shoot me.
I think the point is more that if you, as a line member or corporation within a NoSec alliance, lose yourself, you don't lose everything. You can just escape with your gear. You can just go join a new corp or alliance. Go back to living the same life. It's not a life or death situation anymore.
I don't know about that. I mean, I don't think you can say losing your Sov is any less, devastating to a group's organization than getting evicted from a wormhole, because it's the exact same idea. The only thing with a wormhole is you only have one of them, whereas Sov, you have multiple systems.
Yeah, don't compare that. You guys have asset safety. We don't.
No, you're not talking to me on the. I am a wormholer, and I.
Oh no, I'm not. I know that. I'm just saying, like,
But
I agree.
It is very similar, because at the end of the day, wormhole groups are going to be smaller, and the logistical effort that goes into running a null corp is very different than a wormhole corp. Trust me, I've been on both sides, and if you are losing a system, people are the problem with running a null alliance, like a big one, is if people start losing, you don't get a lot of people who are like, oh, let's go fight them and let's fight to the last stand. A lot of people just stop playing, because that's how kind of null blob warfare works. It's just like, let's AIDS the other group to death, let's make them really bored. So that, I think, is even more devastating in some ways than getting kicked out of your wormhole, because it's not like, in a wormhole fight, obviously there's AIDS on both sides, but it's not as like, well, I just can't play the game anymore. And in some ways, I mean, in other ways, yeah, you're getting camped into your hole, so you can't play the game. But either way, that's not the point I really want to make. I think the big problem with Eve, just to segue to something else, is people don't want to go into a fight that they expect to lose. So if they expect that they're going to lose, they're just not going to fight if they have the option. And there's a huge disparity between skill levels of different players. So a lot of people who are on one end of that just expect to lose every single fight, versus people that they know are not bad. And on the other end of that, people who are really good, or at least better than average, are like, oh, I'm going to win every single fight. And both sides kind of get mad when they lose. So like on one side, you're like, well, people blobbed us, but we're better than them, so we should have won. And on the other side, it's like, well, like they're flying gay stuff and we had bigger numbers, so we should have won. And it kind of really polarizes both groups to thinking like, well, we should have won because we had these things, when all PvP is a mix of, the ships that you bring and also your skill level and your ability to maximize their efficacy. And I think what Eve really lacks is a strong direction towards learning how to get good at the game, and a direction towards, not just, oh, n+1, let's just, kind of brain dead, brute force our way to winning fights by just bringing better numbers, instead of trying to figure out how we can maximize our ship usage. And that maybe never was a big thing in Eve, because it's so mechanically difficult to learn. It's just weird. It doesn't really make any sense. But that's something I think is really kind of at the downfall of all PvP and EVE, where people just kind of expect to lose fights or they expect to win fights, and when it doesn't go the way that they kind of want, they get really mad about it.
But isn't that anger a good trigger for longer wars, for grudges, for the type of drama that keeps the game flowing?
I think it's the opposite of that. I think it incentivizes people to not play the game the right way. If I'm going to stand on a soapbox, which is take risks, it incentivizes people to, assess a situation and say, okay, well, I don't want to lose. So if my assessment of this fight, oh, some dudes came into our system with a bunch of nano gang shit, and if I try to fight it, I'm gonna die. They're just gonna not undock, and that sucks. But they're not wrong for thinking that. What the problem is that there's no one there to tell them, okay, this is what we have to do to kill these things. Instead of there being that person, everyone is like, well, I don't really want to get dunked on by a bunch of Orthruses and shit, so let's just not fight.
But I think that comes down to like the leadership of the individual groups.
Exactly.
I mean,
I think.
I started.
Sorry.
I started in the uni, and like, believe me, we got dunked on by everything. But like, we still undocked like every night. We went out, we tried to kill stuff, we tried to learn. But that was the environment. Like the uni, like you feel like you're in school, so you're there to learn. And in the uni, like I always thought, like as a new bro, like all these dudes on fight, and they've got like max 5 skills. All of them know every mechanic in the game. And then you get outside the uni, and you're like, wow, these people are really bad. Like I can't believe I put them on such a pedestal. And maybe that changed my personal perspective. But I've always been the one like I want to try to instill the knowledge that I've gained to my new bros to help them not be scared to undock and not be scared to take a loss and like take a risk here or there. But at the same time, let's learn from what we did wrong so we can get better about it.
Yeah,
I've definitely got to give credit to groups like Horde and Brave who just undock for everything. Even if they just like super blob you with like 30 dudes, at least they go out and have a try. Even when they blob you, they feed
actually,
the fun and they have a bunch of fun.
my perspective on that, this is something I wanted to say since the start, if we're talking about roaming here, is that groups like Horde and Brave actually have ruined roaming as it used to be. And it's not like their fault. No one was like, oh, let's ruin roaming. It's just that safety in numbers philosophy, and there's nothing to de-incentivize that. But what happens is these groups all come together and they don't really know how to play the game, and they suck up all the new players and get them into this mentality of, okay, let's throw everything we have all the time, which is great if there aren't 300 dudes, but it sucks if you're anyone who's like smaller than them trying to fight them, because they don't have to like fly their ships well or make interesting decisions during a fight necessarily to win. They just have to throw their 300 dudes sitting in system at you, and that's like what the fight is, and you're basically just like shooting ants, which is fun for a little while, but it makes it so that there isn't as much skill as comp like going into the fight. So I think like what used to make roaming really interesting was you just go to some random dude space and they might have 10 dudes, they might have 20 dudes, and they would throw like random shit at you. And now it's you go to a similar system, but instead of throwing 10, 20 dudes, they throw like 50 dudes at you in completely random shit, which would be hilarious to fight, but now it's like 5 times the numbers.
Does anyone remember like 2012 when you used to go out roaming and find what he found, or you'd find like one other person roaming and you'd have like a 1v1?
Yeah, it doesn't happen anymore.
It doesn't happen. Like it doesn't happen at all, and that's what's really sad. Is like, and I think it comes down to like what Tao was saying about people not incentivizing. It was Tao saying.
Well, I mean,
Like,
I think you're looking at something different. Like, do you not think it's technology that's helping? So, like back in the day, they didn't have Jabber, they didn't have Discord, they didn't have what's the other one? Anyway, but like so,
Slack.
like as a dude, you Slack, thank you. As a an FC that wants like dudes are in my pocket, and I want to get a couple dudes. I've only got 4, they got 8. You send out a ping. You have people X up in the fleet, like, oh, cool, I got 10 dudes. We're not really in the greatest shit. Let's fucking go for it. You undock, next thing you know, there's 20 people there, all because you pinged. And like when you multiply that by a larger group like Brave or Horde where they ping and the FC thinks they got like 15 dudes, you undock and you got 80 because people that were just playing another game alt tabbed over and undocked with you. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not like, well, I don't know what I'm saying.
So this is a topic I kind of wanted to glaze over here with the roaming is I'm afraid that some of the best aspects of old roaming and the aspects that make roaming exciting even today, getting into a fight that you didn't expect, finding something valuable, happening upon a situation that, I don't know how I really fit into this big fight, but maybe I can get involved and get a couple kills. Some of those aspects are dying at the moment, and I think that some of it is player behavior and player activity, where we just spend a bunch of time comparing wormhole space, where there's a culture of undock and create content. If you don't create content, we'll come evict you at some greater point if you're not a participant of the wormhole community, versus nullsec groups where there's a diversity between small groups who don't have enough guys to organize to fight a decent gang, or enough experience or enough experienced FCs to field against a competent group. For example, I watched my guys whelp endlessly into a PL Volta gang who they were completely outskilling them, just head shoulders above them. And I just kept watching these guys just feed into them, and I was like, oh my god. But there are small groups like that, and there's big groups who do the opposite, where they just light a Sino on every gate, and there's a super following you around the second you come into their space, right? Because they want protected, safe space for their bears, right?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like the thing that sucks is we're all complaining, oh, roaming sucks now and whatnot, but I don't know that there's necessarily a way to fix that. Like that's just human nature, as we kind of alluded to earlier, where people want that safety in numbers. They want that ability to say, hey, this is our engagement. You know, they have this, we have this. You know, we can win or we can lose. And if we win, let's fight. If we're going to lose, let's not. And that's just people making rational decisions. And if we want a game where old style roaming is more common, and you know that kind of uncertainty when you're going into a fight is more common, if we want that, which I do want that, I think that's what makes ePvP amazing. People have to go against that inclination to do what's rational, and it might be rational to them because they don't know what's going on. But like I said earlier, you know, people's appraisal of a situation is what creates the fight or doesn't create the fight. And a lot of people don't really know what is going to happen, or that they're like jaded because they think they're always going to lose versus nano stuff. But anyways, yeah, this is like my favorite topic to talk about.
Oh, jaded.
But it's like, you know, can we force people to take fights that they don't think they're going to win? No. So I think the real key here is to incentivize either fighting in smaller groups, which CCP have kind of tried to do with Entosis, but it didn't really work. Or in the very least, people need to like want to lose ships or want to PvP, or at the end of the day, like they need to go against that inclination to be like, okay, I'm going to only take fights that I want to win, and I'm not going to take fights that I think I'm going to lose, because that's gay and it's boring as fuck.
I don't even know if it's that. I think it stems back to a lack of leaders, a lack of people that are just willing to herd into a group. Like I've noticed there's a difference if, and this stems back to my time in the uni. Like, hey, there's some guys roaming through. Who wants to kill them? And you'll get like 3 people. If you say, like, hey, there's some people roaming through our space, I'm gonna go kill them. Who's coming? And you'll get like 10 dudes. It's a difference between asking a question and saying I'm going to go do this, and just getting the rest of the people to join in and do it.
And a hard part as an FC, and we learned this when we're smaller than we used to be. Like there was a time when we were kind of rising to the top of C4 space. Like I could say, hey, fucking venture to go tackle down a chain, and I'd get 30 Serbs in fleet, and that's a big fleet for W space. Like. And I'd get it fast. Like we reached a point where I had to deliberately say, "Hey, we're taking this many guys. I need you, you, and you." And it's really hard for FCs to do that, and it sounds detrimental, but it's sort of like this vicious circle. The reason that most roaming gangs tend to fly nano stuff, which most null groups find so unpleasant to fight, is because most null groups like to drop 200 dudes on them, and nano gang is kind of the only way you can really fight that. Like back in 2012 and 2011, like we used to roam in brawling ships. Talos's solo roaming were a legit thing. Myrmidon, that was my bread and butter as a newbie in Eve. But that just doesn't happen anymore.
I would like to get to solutions. I'd like to talk about solutions and what we see as the solution to what ails us about roaming. But to get there, I want you to each share one of your favorite roaming stories. It doesn't have to be too long, but tell me your favorite roaming story and why that experience was so good.
Anyone want to start?
I'll start. I was roaming this was a couple months back, not too long ago, just in a stabber and a walrus, 2-man gang. Came to some wormholes, there was some corp inside, they were pretty active, so I tried to stir them up. They had docked 8 Navy battle cruisers plus T2 artillery for us, and bitched that we wouldn't fight. We went back through our wormhole, they chased us, they sat on the wormhole, they went back through. They were just so angry that we wouldn't fight, and then on their way back, they just rolled out their hick, and we managed to kill their 500 mil hick because they rolled themselves out because they robbed us too hard. That's honestly my favorite fight I've ever had in this game.
Anyone else?
I was trying to find a BR, but unfortunately, I guess the BR tool I used to use is dead. But kind of tying into what we've been talking about, the most fun, well, maybe not the most fun, but the most memorable thing I've ever done in EVE was it was probably about 2 years ago when Requiem Eternal were still living up in Peregrine Falls, and I think it was 6-8. Those were probably my favorite times in EVE, even though it was objectively a shitty time to be playing. Maybe better than now, but still objectively pretty trash. Just because Thermo had kind of reformed for the second or third time with the express purpose of harassing a null group because we needed some sort of direction. And we chose this group Requiem Eternal because they consistently gave us ridiculous fights. And we won them a lot, and we usually came out on without any losses, which I can definitely understand why they wouldn't want to keep fighting us, though I think it's kind of the wrong way to go about things. But they would just consistently give us these crazy fights. And I was trying to find a BR of this one where we went into system with, I think it was about maybe 8 real players on comms, maybe closer to 12 ships. I think we had 2 Storks, a Garmer, 5 or 6 Eagles, and a Hugin and a Curies, and maybe a Scepter or 2. I can't really remember. I would look at the BR, but it's gone. And ended up staying there in their home system for about 3 hours and killed over 150 ships with essentially 4 or 5 Eagles versus probably 50 guys. Because we had somehow managed to get them to warp a carrier off their home station, 300 off. And the fight was so long because they spent the entire night slow boating this carrier through Hugin webs back to station from warping 300 off. We weren't able to break it with our Eagles. And they were warping shit out to try and save him, and they had a Moros and a second carrier and all these subcaps that we ended up fragging. And it was just this ridiculous carnage filled night that made no fucking sense because we just showed up oh, maybe they'll feed us another miner. These guys we started roaming their space because literally every single time we would go there, we could catch a Hulk just AFK in an ice anomaly and start a fight that way. And it was consistent and it was amazing. And I'm so thankful for Requiem giving our alliance a second chance because we were on kind of life support at that point. But anyways, if I had the BR, you guys would see how retarded it was. It was over 120, 150 ships killed, and for almost the entire night, it was really only 4 or 5 ships shooting at them, a few Eagles and a Hugin. And what ended that fight was not the carrier getting back to station. It wasn't them running out of ships or anything. It wasn't the loss of morale on both sides because we had some losses as well. We lost a 500 mil Garmer 10 seconds into the fight because fucking Catalyst is a retard. But what ended that fight was some random guy coming on their comms. This was not shortly before they went to Drone Walkers, but kind of around that time. Some guy from another alliance who was kind of a leader and knew how to do cat PvP or something like that came onto their comms and asked what was going on. And they showed him how much they were feeding. And then he was like, you guys have to stop this, dock up, don't fight them. And we tried intosising, we tried fighting them from then on, and it just wouldn't happen. We would go back to their space, they would not fight us. And it's that voice saying, don't feed to these guys and don't fight because you're gonna lose, that negativity and that well, we might as well not fight because we can't win, kind of mentality. that doesn't make any sense to us, but makes sense to people who are in that position. That's what kills PvP in this game. And it's that idea that, I would rather die 0 times and learn nothing than, fight 100 times and lose all my money and come out with like this crazy fight experience. And I was talking to people, like I've always been friends with some of the people in Requiem ever since then. And they were like, I remember that night, it was like 2 years ago, I lost like 10 ships. And like that like has left such an imprint on a lot of people. Like people who don't play the game anymore that I used to fly with in Thermo are all like, do you remember that one fight? And it was ridiculous. And everybody is like, holy shit, that was amazing. And that guy came on comms and ended it all just by saying, why are you guys feeding so many ships? And it's like that mentality of like, oh, let's not lose. That's what kills PvP. And this guy coming in, acting like he knows what's going on, saying, don't fight them. That's what I hate in this game.
I've posted your battle report in the document. It's updated for the new service.
Oh boy. Let's bring back some memories, boys. Yeah, so 133 ships lost. There was some other ships killed in the surrounding systems. It looks like we have more on that BR than we did because some of the dudes came in later. We called for help from Thera to try and kill the carrier. But throughout almost the entirety of the fight, there was it was actually 4 Eagles and a Rapier. And the Gila, the Mac came in later, Oracle came in later, Nomen came in later. Everything that's not Thermo came in like way later. So it's really just the 4 Eagles, the Rapier, the Storks, the Sabers, and the Curiouses.
I mean, go ahead, and Terry.
I was just gonna. He triggered a memory of mine from my favorite one. I was having problems deciding on which one it was. If you had something to comment on his, then go right ahead. If not, I think mine was I was still back in the uni, and in the uni we didn't fly a whole lot of the Tech 2 ships because you don't have the SP pilots to actually fly them. But it was my birthday, I think, a year and a half, 2 years ago maybe, and we took out like Sacrilege Fleet, and we had a couple of Guardians, and I remember we were docked up for like an hour because we we actually didn't have the Guardian hulls, and we had to have them jump rated in. And this was back when Aquarius Flight Club was still around, like with Brave and Horde, and I think Rote was still down there. And we finally got them. Like we were drunk as crap. It was my birthday. I was fucking hammered, and we went over to see Brave. And man, like those guys, like you're saying, like they just undock, man. Like it was right after the capital changes, so like the faxes were new. They had a fax on grid, and like we were just going at it for like an hour and a half. And like you're trying to call targets, and just everyone was having fun. And like we had one dude in a command destroyer just randomly jumping random things off and try to burn over and kill it. And man, it was just a blast. I had 2 Guardians, and we lasted for like it had to have been an hour. And honestly, I think I ended up calling it just because I was too drunk to call targets at the time, and we just called it. But it was some of my friends still they still bring it up. Like, remember your birthday, Rome, like two years ago? It was just one of those things where like the fight didn't end, and it was just a blast. Like you're in the firing squad, and I think those are the moments that you remember the most in Eve.
I mean, mine was when I was back in the north. I think I was living in Tribute at the time. We took a wormhole, and a small gang of us, it took us out to drone regions. And we were roaming through gates. We had a Saber, a couple Scepters, a couple small DPS. Nothing exciting, but we were looking for targets of opportunity. And we jumped through one gate, and there was a hauler, just a T1 hauler on scan. So we crashed gate, bubbled up, caught the hauler on the other side, and killed him. And inside the hauler was a secure cargo container. The guy messages us, like whoever got the kill mail, he messaged him with an in-game Eve mail. Here's the password to my secure giant container, or whatever he had, secure freight container. You can unlock it and take the stuff out of it. So we unlocked it. There was like 230 mil worth of stuff, but too big for us to shove into any of our interceptors and sabers and stuff. We just didn't have enough space. So then this turned into like just a random roam, no real typical roam, until like the bank job where we had to like send a guy back to the hole, get a hauler, we had to escort him from the hole way out to this loot that we had defended for like 15 minutes. He grabs the loot, then we like have to like do a roaming patrol back to the wormhole to evac this loot. We're expecting like their guys to come out and jump us at all times. Like it was the first time in Eve where I felt like we were bank robbers or train heist villains.
Yeah, it's a great story, and stuff like that I think doesn't happen as much anymore because of the proliferation of jump caps like carrier suitcases and jump traders and whatnot. But also because like scarcity isn't as much a big deal in Eve anymore. Like people don't care as much about, you know, holding on to their shit, whether it be ships or whatever, because stuff is relatively cheap right now. I mean, it's all told when you look at like, you know, Mac prices used to be 250, 300 mil. A ship that used to be like 1.5 bill. So like we do talk a lot about, oh, you know, people don't want to lose their stuff, but there is not nearly as much scarcity in the resources and the stuff that you have available to you, that like would contribute to people kind of wanting to fight for that. And you know, things like gate camping, freighters and logistics routes used to be a thing, but now like that's just not really tenable. So that sense of like, oh, you know, we don't even necessarily have access to the ships we want to fly if we're living out in Null, isn't really as a big a deal anymore.
I feel like we're missing one Rome story. No, maybe?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the best Rome story I have with my group. The most memorable fight story I think was during an eviction. Most memorable Rome story is when I had a friend teaching us Nano Gang, and we tackled a carrier and had a Proteus land on grid. And this was in our early C2 days. No one knew how to do anything. We were all flying caracals and molluses. And he tackles the carrier. Proteus lands on the grid. He says, "Okay, point to Proteus," and every single person in a 10-man fleet points to Proteus and drops point on the carrier, and the carrier warps off. And the utter disappointing silence and comms was pretty beautiful.
You hear the pin drop on that one.
Yeah, you can hear the pin drop. I learned later that he wasn't a patient person, so I'm surprised he kept with us. As far as a actual memorable fight, it would probably be our first eviction. We had some Germans who refused to fight us, and they were told that that was a good way to get evicted, and maybe we'd evict them. Like a week later, we had a friends roll into them like, "Hey, these guys have carriers. They refuse to fight. They're shit talking slow. You want to do it?" So we're like, "Hell yes, let's do it." So we go in, set up, start evicting, and I think the second day, 2 groups roll into us: Drop Bears Anonymous, much bigger than us at the time, and Catastrophic Overview Failure. And this was back when they were really big and really good. But we were sort of friends with them, so I joined their comms. And apparently the Germans had contacted them to kill us instead. And they had also asked Drop Bears. So after like 30 minutes of mad Diplo skills, I get Drop Bears and Koff to agree to help evict the corp. And then afterwards, we'll all have a 3-way brawl. And then we all just threw down after we finished killing the Germans and reinforcing the boss, and had a big old brawl with DNIs and a heavy armor fleet. It's a good time.
Sweet. So I wanted to try to cover some potential solutions here in the last few minutes of the show. We covered how there could be potentially changes to local, maybe associated with the broadcast center structure that has been discussed at length by players and CCP. We covered potentially adding scramming rats to anomalies, so that more ships are held to be prey for the predators who are coming around from system to system. Do you think that loot from ships, T2 modules, will increase with the refinery changes, and that could increase people wanting to go commit legit piracy, maybe more specifically in low sec, but
I think a lot of people subsist, especially in low sec, off the loot they get from fights, but that's generally more kind of the minority and people who already have a pretty good understanding of how to play the game and how to win fights. So I don't think subsisting off of loot is ever really going to be a major playstyle.
I heard there was a day back in the day when like Covert Ops cloaks were like 120 mil.
In some places, just because like it wasn't realistic to go all the way to like Jita or wherever to get a Covop's cloak, so like people would be like there used to be a big thing over upselling mods in like your home space in Null, where it was like you were like, you know, it was like how Hitler viewed the Jews, you know, like people would think you were this detestable scum, but it used to be a really big deal where people would either make stuff in Null or bring stuff out from HiSec and sell it in Null for like a huge upsale. So that's probably where that came from. I don't think co-ops cloaks are ever quite that expensive though.
I mean, I would roam more and be looking to get more kills and spend more time PvPing if I knew I could make more money off PvPing than just sitting in my VNI.
Yeah, I wish that there was a way to do that without messing with the game's economy, but I don't know. I think it all comes down to incentivizing people to fight more. But whether you do that on like the positive side where you give them stuff for fighting or the negative side where you take away their space for not fighting, I don't know.
Could we move some of the insurance cost or increase the cost of insurance and then put some of that value into ship hulls for when they're destroyed?
I mean, I don't think it has. I don't think the fights have anything to do with the loot that's going to drop, or especially when it comes to roaming. I think it just comes down to us as players having someone in your group step up and take the fight. Like the hardest, for some reason, the hardest thing for people to do is to just grab the reins of that horse and just ride off into the sunset. Like whatever. There's like 10, 15 dudes like like organize, undock, and do it. But it seems to be the hardest thing for people to do.
I feel the groups that typically roam have this reputation of already having like tons of faction mods on their ships. From like the perspective of like those sec players, so I don't think like the value of the routes really what's stopping them from like going out and fighting.
I mean, wormholers always have the best loot. They fly nothing but dead space, right?
Like
Oh, I wish.
For sure, when you see like some bolter dude in your space, you're gonna think he's going to have like 500 mil of dead space on his ship.
Yeah, it's a
He's
full
going to
purple
pay us
room.
to kill him.
I mean, I'd like to say that was the case, except it is Dead Space, but mainly because Dead Space is now really cheap.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how cheap like full dead space fits are.
Well, do we think that refineries and the proliferation of oracles and other mining fleets within the refineries are going to add fire to that roaming kind of gameplay?
I hope so.
I think anything that helps create active content, getting people undocked and out in space, is going to help the rest of us as roamers, because there's just more people in space. And let's face it, people are bad at this game, and those are the ones that you catch. And that's how you start some really interesting fights, is that one dude that wasn't paying attention and didn't warp off, he gets tackled. Maybe you can't kill him, but his friends have to come rescue him.
I've ridden a hobby horse in this show before that I feel that space is too big. I think groups are too far apart, and that's why roaming is challenging unless you find a good wormhole. So do you think that adding more null-to-null wormholes, perhaps with smaller mass limits? I know what I'm
Bitter
suggesting.
subject for us wormholers. The logs show nothing.
No, I mean, there's a Thera hole popping up in my space like every hour. Like there's no shortage of wormholes appearing. I think it's just a matter of the FCs and the people that are organizing the groups for the roams. Just there's some trial and error in it. Like you got to check out some people and see if they're willing to undock, and if they are, maybe you come back if it's a short ride. If it's not, then you write them off and you go somewhere else.
Well, what I mean by null-to-null wormholes is like if I want to take my group from my back pocket of Fountain and go roam somewhere, it's a minimum of 12 to 14 jumps before I hit another group that we haven't had to make a diplomatic arrangement with just to maintain our solve, right?
Right.
Just
but-
tell you
Go ahead.
tell you guys to put a jump code in Thera and just go from there.
I mean, but even when
That's
you get
what
the,
I did at first.
even when you get the wormhole to a space that isn't blue or whatever the dynamic is, you still have to find the guys that are willing to undock and not
Yeah.
just drop
And
carriers on you, right?
I think the issue is its space isn't big. It's the areas of space that you can't fight is big, and if you just make space bigger, those areas are just going to get bigger.
I mean, even when I lived in Losec, like we still had to roam like 10, 12 jumps before we started finding people that were actually out and about, and that's in Black Rise.
Well, I don't want to make space bigger. I want to make space smaller. Even if we have to put more mechanics into the game that allow us to move around space quicker. My other suggestion would be more and easily deployed jump bridges, whether that's through the new Stargate system, even if like anyone can go through the jump bridge.
I just feel like what I said just goes the same way in reverse. Like people want to be safe in their space, so they're going to do whatever it takes to be safe within space and make whatever diplomatic ties. It's how do you incentivize people to not blue everyone around where they live? Like how do you do that?
I think it's more about the players and wanting.
Yeah,
to
it's
it really is. It's about us wanting to fight the people that are roaming through your space. It's not about docking
Like-
up for the range.
CCP can only do so much, and I think that's a problem with a lot of people trying to find game mechanic fixes for what is an ideological problem. And you can do as much as you want game wise, but apart from like forcing people to shoot each other, like there's only so much you can do until people have to decide to rock the boat.
In that current state, jump bridges will just be used to make more spots where you can just teleport ahead and camp people into your pockets anyway. If anything, more jump bridges would just hurt roaming. Since like groups like Providence use jump bridges as a time to just teleport to the end of a pipe and just camp you in there with like 20 dudes.
I mean, last night I roamed for 40 jumps in an interceptor, and I was looking for soft targets or maybe some frigates or yeah, the only things I found out in space besides overwhelming gangs that I couldn't fight, this was through the catch region, was a couple people running Entosis nodes.
I think it goes back to there's a trial and error with learning where people are and where people are willing to fight. I still feel it's on us as players to create the content, and that's what makes this game great. But I still feel like there's not enough people that are willing to help create that content.
Yeah,
I think there's
and this has been brought up a lot. I think about all CCP can do is just incentivize people being on grid.
Yeah, making them undock helps a lot.
Yeah, like make sites worth running, make sites harder to do, or at least enjoyable, and make them hold you on grid, or make you pay attention. Like that's about all you can do. And like people, there's a lot of nullset guys trolling wormholers on Reddit post about how we wanted our sites fixed, saying we just wanted our unassailable wealth back, but that's really not the case. We just want people on grid. We wanted moon mining not because we particularly wanted to mine, but that's just more things to shoot. That's defense fleets to fight.
They're scary, dude. I'm not going in there.
They're scary because we live there.
There's no local. I don't know who's there. Like, there's 100 people waiting to kill me. I'm not going in a wormhole. You crazy?
I'm allergic to Cloaky Proteuses.
I do think there's definitely ways of adapting around the current mentality of the game. Like, I found ways of like making the groups who just like dock up all the time, like undock and actually try to shoo you away, whether it be like set up a bubble in the middle of their server and just start camping, or by just insulting them enough to make them want to undock out of sheer rage. I think it's just the pure mechanical methods of making people undock that just don't work anymore.
I was gonna say Entosis the station, and it automatically ejects everyone that's hiding in it.
Oh,
Except there's no station.
Wouldn't that be balanced? I do think that the introduction of Citadels has put a huge damper on all PvP in the game. I think it was a pretty crushing mechanic to roaming. But what I would like to see is some interaction with making it so that you can't just immediately tether. Like I wish people, like, if they warp to a structure, they would have to wait like a certain amount of time before they could tether or something like that. Something that just prevents people from going to a structure and docking up like the moment something happens.
Well, what they're
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to meet there is the parity to posses, where you could just warp to a posse and you'd be instantly safe.
Yeah, but obviously Posses didn't have all the.
And part of I think we should give CCP some time is like a lot of these implementations are not going to be as it is. The main thing that CCP has to do, and when people complain about CCP, I think they overlook the fact that they have to kind of make us do things and coax us into doing things before they pull the rug out from under us, because we as players tend to be risk adverse and don't want to change, and the only way they get people to live in citadels is if they think they're equivalent to posses. So hopefully they start phasing out some of like the instant safety. Like the combat timers was nice. Maybe they tone that. Like I don't know all the answers for citadels. I think they're going in interesting in a decent direction as far as W space is concerned. But yeah, I think it's important to keep that in mind.
My main concern about Citadels is that they just have too much of a presence on the grid when you're actually fighting. Like the 250 km scram web, the ECM that like permajams your ships, and the newts they're just breaking for a small gang. You just cannot fight that.
Well, I mean, the scrams are only active if it's invulnerable.
Even without the scram, so it's still a 250 km Vindicator web. It's a bit
If you're in something
crazy.
small, you get tackled by a Citadel, then you're not paying attention.
Well,
it takes forever to lock something.
I think the problem is that like stations used to be like a really natural spot for people to fight, because they'd be in their routing ship, they'd go back to station, and then undock in their PvP ship. And if you just warp to a station, you could like harass people trying to move around systems and whatnot. So it was like a great way to get fights where you would go to that point of entry and exit and like start fights on that grid. And now you can't fight on that same grid anymore. You have to fight on a grid where something else is happening. You can't just kind of engage people just because they're undocking. You have to engage people in a PvE site or on a gate or something like that. Whereas before with stations, you could just fight people the moment they undocked.
Stations also gave the defenders a much more acceptable home advantage than like Citadels do. Like they have the advantage of reshipping like instantly, like they could just undock a bunch of stuff, but Citadels just give them like the straight advantage straight away.
Yeah, I wish that they didn't tie in that kind of huge soft mechanic. These things are meant to defend themselves from cap fleets, with being like, the stations of old where that's where people would undock and that's where so many fights were started. They just don't really work together for small gang.
All right, well, we are running quickly out of time. I want to get your guys' top ship. I want to go buy 10 of them. What's the ship I should go buy 10 of for my next roam, either solo or with my group?
A hyper-rigged kiting AUG Navy issue.
Holy shit, I love you.
What?
So
That
hyperspatial
ship brings
rigs,
back some memories.
hyperspatial rigs for the warping around speed, and then what were the other?
Yep. It's a kiting auger Navy issue.
My boy.
Run 2 medium nukes on it.
Sounds good. Tau?
Yeah, I was gonna say Omen Navy if you're solo, because it's just the most like versatile ship in the game. But my favorite ship to solo in is actually the Navy AUG, because it flies exactly like an Omen Navy, but it's got those 2 medium newts, so you can like newt off shits that's tackling you and whatnot. And it's like such a big question mark because people think you're gonna be like a brawling armor.
So good.
And then like nobody knows what's going on when you're suddenly going like 2K a second. And yeah, I'm so surprised that you mentioned that, because it's actually my favorite ship to fly in the whole game. I don't hyperspatial rig it though. I fit it like exactly the same as an.
I'm addicted to warping fast. I like outrunning sabers. It's weird.
AUG Navy is definitely not my favorite ship. I do love the ship a lot. It's like the kite version is just so good.
All right, give me a non-heathen version of this.
You want a
But
Ramboy?
as far as my favorite ship goes, it's definitely like the Nano Drake or the Nano Butix. Battlecruisers are just so strong.
Yeah, give you lots of options, right?
I think also the succubus is like if you want to get into solo roaming, either flying a scepter or a succubus is a really good way to kind of get comfortable. Not just kiting, because you can brawl easily with a succubus, but being able to control grid really well, because that's kind of where the Sancha ships are strong, just controlling the fight by using that AD that can't get scrammed off, and they're like super versatile. So succubus is definitely high up there.
I've actually been enjoying the succubus the past couple of days. Like just being able to transition straight from brawling to kiting whenever I want is just amazing.
Yeah, super comfortable to fly.
See, this is where everyone finds that I'm not a small ganger, because I'm still a big fan of the T3Ds. I just love the Confessor. It's just there's a couple different ways you can fit it, but for me and what I do with my group, like 10 to 15 dudes with some Logi, and you can really just have some fun and hit above your weight. People don't expect it. They're like, oh,
Yeah,
I
it's
absolutely love
a Confessor.
T3Ds still.
But it's like the Svipple, like everyone's scared of Swipples, but like you take out some Confessors and they're not as scared of them.
I don't understand why people are scared of Speeples. Oh, like they're honestly the worst.
well, they used to be so oppressive, so
Yeah, like old Svipple was crazy, but new Svipple is kind of just a nice thrasher with a bit more speed. It's a great ship.
So my recommendation, if you're looking to get some roams in, is Command Destroyer, and my favorite would be the Bifrost. Not only does it give you the chance to pull off some unsuspecting idiot from his home defense gang, but you can also get yourself out of bad situations involving bubbles and long points and insta-locking freaking scepters. Yeah, Command Destroyers.
That was a really good call, if I'm honest. I like the Bifrost. You can do so many different things with them.
Your gang will also love you when you MJD the scrams off nano ships.
And then boost the entire fleet.
Oh god, yeah. But like you don't boost the entire fleet because the boost range is too short.
So
That's one thing I wish they upgraded a bit.
So there are two little topics we missed within the player muse I wanted to cover quickly. One was there was a thread about 500 MN Hicks being overpowered for solo, small, and micro gangs. Nobody brought this up, so
Webs.
You can't really web them. They go 10, 8k a second.
yeah, they're just retarded and have no.
They catch you before you can even lock them up. Like, and they decroak, croaky, nullified. They just do everything. Bad shit.
I didn't even know they were a thing until that thread.
Yeah, it was pretty down low about actually keeping it a secret. Like, just the 9Co guys knew it, some Slice guys knew it, and one CO2 guy, to my knowledge, actually used it.
But the thread says they're everywhere. We
They
can
are
do
now.
everything that we hear on Reddit.
I have to buy
Oh,
3 now.
they are now, yeah.
I'll seed them in different locations, then they're everywhere.
They were pretty secret, and then Sutonia just made a video about it, and then everyone started using it.
I'll have to wait till I run into him.
And the last one was about a roam that resulted in a guy getting kicked from his alliance. XXX Alox XXX was kicked from Waffles for losing his carrier during a memorial roam for a Feigned Disorder pilot who passed away recently. And the Eve Reddit thread got to 1,000 comments plus of people slagging Waffles for kicking a guy for a memorial roam.
Honestly, that's just become a complete meme in my group. Like, it's just one of those days. Like, it's just so absurd, the whole idea of getting kicked for going on a roam to remember a friend.
I mean, yeah, it's just absurd. Like, I can't. Like, I know internet spaceships are super serious, but I can't imagine it being to the point of seriousness that I would kick a member for going on a memorial roam and losing a ship like that. Man, that's just not cool.
Yeah, I don't think anyone should be surprised. Ray's is a fucking scumbag, so I don't think anyone should bother about what he's talking about. Just ignore the guy.
I mean, when we all want to dismantle PL, you guys know where to find me.
Oh, I mean, I don't even consider him
That's not
part of
even
PL.
PL.
He's just a fucking
That's
scumbag.
I checked his alliance tag, guys. Come on.
Oh wait, are they in PL now?
They are, but
Yeah.
it's like, you know, it's
Oh,
Ray's.
they're not a
He's
they're not a
like,
feeder corp anymore. I mean, they've been upgraded.
Losec's dead, right? So
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
All sex stuff.
I missed the Reddit post on that.
oh yeah,
It's just-
Losec, yeah.
The whole idea of it is just so foreign to me. How someone can just consider it to be that serious to go on like a CTA.
Yes, it is completely ridiculous that that guy was kicked. I don't think I would ever get mad at someone flying a ship and losing it for Memorial Rome. Forget a normal Rome. Fuck it. If you just want to go have fun and lose a ship and you want to put some red on the kill board, doesn't matter. Did you have fun? Good. You probably learned something too. You probably got a cool story. And most of the shit I do in life is just for a cool story. If I don't get a cool story out of it, what the fuck am I doing it for? So with that, I want to hype the local meetups that are coming up this week. We have a Charlotte, North Carolina meetup this week. It's a monthly meetup. We have the Melbourne and Houston Eve meetups this weekend. Houston is a monthly meetup. And then next week, we have Amsterdam and Amsterdam, November 4th. And then 3 weeks away after that, we have Eve NT London, November 18th, 2017. Go meet some Eve nerds, talk with them, buy them a drink, start a war.
It's happened before.
Definitely happened before.
And it'll probably happen again.
I'm going to shout them out one more time this week. eveonion.com. If you want to check some parodies, you want to check some Mimi content, Eve Onion through Opus Magnum and his guys are posting it up on their Twitter as well as on their website, eveonion.com. And I'll mention it one more time this week. We are still open for co-hosts for the show and producers on top of regular guests. I mean, I still want you to come be a guest. Thank you all you guys who are new guests this week. We're always looking for more guests, but if you're interested in the show, you like listening to the show, you want to help make the show better, we're looking for producers to help in lots of different ways. Contact me. You can talk to me about what you'd be interested in doing, whether that's hosting the stream on a Monday I can't make it, whether it's co-hosting, whether it's wrangling some very cool guests from your group or the groups you know. Please contact me and we can talk about it in our Discord. Let's get some shout outs and then wrap this show up. We'll start at the bottom with you, Mil.
I guess I've got to shout out my Alliance Road Capel. Great guys, fun to roam with, fun to be around. And I've got to shout out the Drake Navy Issue Utility High initiative. Like, get that ship a utility high.
Shout out to my Dead Alliance. Shout out to Conderson for tackling 2 supers earlier today and making me log in for the first time in weeks.
Yeah, good old logging in.
It's hard to do.
Did you forget your password or?
Oh, I just haven't wanted to play.
Red John?
Summer should fly more Drakes. He'll know what I'm talking about. And if you want to chill Wormhole Alliance, who actually undocks, Glory Holers are always recruiting.
I'm not sure
I love these guys.
wormholes exist, but good on him.
Any
Ed
place
Terry,
for people undock exists.
I still don't know. No sob map. Don't exist.
Yeah, it's a scary place that no one knows if it actually exists or not. Definitely shout out to all my digital Vendetta bros. So proud of you guys. In a year and a half, we went from 12 dudes to over 1,000 tunes. And we're currently doing with this small incursion in the north. Keep your heads up, guys. We're fighting the good fight, and we're finally contents at our doorstep. So it's going to be a long grind, but it's not over yet.
What's the status there? Fortizar down, incursion, a lot of solve flipping.
That's about it. They're just creating a whole crap load of timers every day.
Are they showing up for a lot, or are they just trying to spin you guys out?
They've intosised all of our pocket like twice, and I think they've killed. Well, they got the very front pocket, and we lost 3 iHubs. And so far, that's about it. But I really don't want to encourage them because Sobnol is boring. Just remember that.
All right. Well, I'm going to shout out the guys down in the south. We're deployed to Curse. We're getting some fights. We are joining in as new mercenaries. So once this contract's up, if you need about 50 angry Iron Armada guys to come fight for you, you can talk to Tridget and get us a mercenary contract for your group. We have no friends. Well, we have some friends, but we don't like them very much. And if you're in that region, come shoot me. I'm in HLW. I'll undock, don't worry. And that's about it. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you're watching live and you missed a portion of it, remember you can catch up on the show via the podcast, via YouTube. The podcast is available at crossingzebras.com. It's available on evepodcast.com, and it's available on our website, mindclash.live. If you are listening to this in post and you didn't realize this was a live show, we record every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on Twitch, twitch.tv/mindclashlive. Tell your friends, tell your parents, tell your mom that you love the Mind Clash and that she should watch it. I don't know what you'd get out of it, but it'd be amusing. And thank you all for coming. We will catch you next week. Have a couple show topics I'm spinning around. There's interest in a show on casual gaming, casual Eve play. If you're a potential guest for that, I'd love to hear from you. I'd also like to discuss groups that have vouch-ins, very restricted player groups. I'd love to hear what the culture is differently from groups who have open recruitment. I'd love to compare and contrast those two styles of alliance leadership. So we will catch you next week on Mind Clash. Any final words, boys?
I just wanted to say it was a great show, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the whole show.
Beautiful. Talk to you guys later.